thanks to Susan Olson for calling us live from the Concord Gun Show. Coming up, Ralph Benko at 9:30, Corey Lewandowski at 10, Max Ledoux at 10:30. We expect to have Kimberly Morin on the phone when we talk to Ralph. She's the person who helped us get. And special shout out to all the Groksters and everybody who helped come together and get us guests this week. You know, I don't always have that kind of time, and everybody helped out, so I appreciate that. And check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We are on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Ustream, and YouTube. And this is Grok Talk.
It is. All day or all morning long.
All right, so what do you want to do for the next 10 minutes or so? We have a couple things we can cover.
I think Rick was just bring something up during the break.
Actually, that's an excellent point. Let's talk about that.
Senate Bill 116. Just to recap for everybody, because the press lies about this bill. They lie. L-I-E-S. Lie, lie, lie. I don't care if you're the Concord Monitor, the Union Leader, the Nashua Teletrash. I don't care who you are.
Right?
You lie. Okay. There we go. Hey, yep, that's what we need. Now, chair dancing now commences.
La, la, la.
Come on, Mike, join in.
I probably shouldn't tell my joke, should I?
No. Okay, so anyway, SB 116, media lies.
Media lies, okay. They all headlined it as doing away with or getting rid of the pistol revolver license New Hampshire issues. Not the case. To do so would take away the reciprocity we have with 19 other states. I know there's 22, but it isn't real reciprocity because they have so many more restrictions in those states. But anyways, I digress. That's not the case. It makes it optional. In other words, if this law passes, I'm still going to go get my pistol revolver license, so I have my reciprocity in Pennsylvania. Ergo, it's not being done away with. So that's the first thing we've got to overcome with legislation, the lies that the press tells about it, because they're not being accurate. The second thing is, we saw this with John Lynch, we saw this with Gene Shaheen, and now we're seeing it with Maggie Hassan. New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police has a very strong voice with the governor's office. That's traditionally been the case. Okay, but understand how many police chiefs are there in New Hampshire? There are 300. And the New Hampshire police chiefs, when you see a piece of legislation come out, you hear from about 10, maybe 12 of those guys. You know, a small percentage. And they really depend on the silence of the other police chiefs. It's not, whatever their position is, it's not universally accepted across the board. We see evidence of this when, you know, all the anti-gun people had 10 kittens a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when they hosted a gun raffle. I don't know if it, I think it was like they were raffling off an AR-15 rifle or something, the police chiefs, to raise money. And everybody went nuts over it, you know. And God bless them, I'm glad they did that. But it just indicates that their positions are not universal within that organization. So two things have to happen. First, we have to look at the legislative history. The first history is that every piece of legislation they have opposed, without exception, has been done somewhere else. It's passed, and blood didn't run in the streets. Okay? We've actually enhanced ability for people to have pistol revolver licenses and safety and well-being. And because they've opposed it here doesn't mean it's opposed universally. The second thing is credibility. Okay, just because you wear a badge and you're a police chief doesn't make you the foremost expert. Okay, there are people that are knowledgeable. Let's take example Sean Haggerty, New Hampshire State Police. Pretty knowledgeable guy. And he can be a little dangerous in the legislative side of things because he takes that knowledge and he's very artful in crafting an argument against a piece of legislation. But outside of those aspects, I think going forward in the future when we do legislation like Senate Bill 116, I think we have to focus on countering whatever arguments they're putting forth, making them less credible. And it's only fair that we make them less credible because oftentimes their assertions are not truthful. You know, they're not grounded in fact. They're grounded in these assertions that, you know, perhaps Million Moms Demand came up with, or Michael Bloomberg, or somebody else. And finally, we got to look at what the vested interest is. And the vested interest is they want to be in charge of guns. They want to control guns. I understand it on one level, but I don't understand it on a citizen level. Because understand something, folks. If 116 passes or doesn't pass, there's one constant here. It makes no difference. If you're a prohibited person under state or federal law, you can't ever carry a gun. You just simply can't. That's the bottom line right there. And that's my rant. What's your thought, Skip?
Well, I actually think that it would be good to finally go back to the idea that constitutional verbiage trumps everything else.
Absolutely.
And I think we've gotten too far away from it with all of the regulatory, especially the regulatory, but a lot of legislators here in the state of New Hampshire, down in D.C., pretty much everywhere, they're all saying, we don't care about the Constitution. It's not up to us to determine whether or not something is constitutional or not. And I hold, like everybody at this table, we are all responsible for determining what is constitutional and what isn't, because that is our foundational law. And the further we get away from the plain language, and I will tell you that in the year plus that Ian Underwood spoke to the House on these kinds of bills and talked about whether words matter in the Constitution, it made my head hurt, because I put that up and I still think of it all the time now. It really is a case of either the words mean things or they don't, and it makes us have to address hard truths, because we think, okay, yeah, somebody who's done a violent crime and is a felon shouldn't have access to a weapon, but when you read the phrase "shall not be infringed," you kind of go, this puts you on point, and you really have to sit and go, which one do I want to go with? Am I on the freedom scale, or am I on the security and safety scale? And I think too often folks have said, I want the safety and security, which never results in freedom, regardless of what they want. And I'm not even talking about Benjamin Franklin's famous phrase here. So I look at that, and it's really a case of, I always blame it on the educational system. They don't teach constitutional philosophy in our school systems anymore, so nobody cares about it because they don't know about it.
No, they don't.
And that, I think, is probably one of the biggest things. And even when you look at results, Vermont, New Hampshire, two of the safest states in the union for gun usage, for murders by guns, suicide or accidental or intentional. Thank you. It just they say these. Yes, they say these things.
You'll find those on gun ranges.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's stultifying to see the reactions of people who really aren't able to talk past the talking points. We all deal with the real data here at Granite Rock.
Absolutely.
I demand it. I demand that everybody source link in their post back to the data on which they are posing things. A lot of other people write, but more on the left, they hear a talking point and that's it. They never go and research it. And that's it. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It does get you angry. Let's look at the data. Same thing with the cell phones in the cars. There's no data available that says cell phones themselves are the crisis point that they are made out to be.
The conversation is, but at this point, the data suggests that the bands don't do anything. So
yeah. The car is full of distractions. The passengers are distractions.
Well, it's not just that. The world is full of distractions.
There's stuff at the side of the road.
You watch young guys driving around Hampton Beach,
Yeah. If you
boom. Oh.
If you let your mind wander for whatever reason, you're not fully focused on the road, and it doesn't have to be the person at the other end of the telephone. If you're not in a phone call, you could still be thinking about stuff.
Yeah. How many of us have we're thinking about a subject, and then you realize, how far down the road have I just gone? I mean, it happens to all of us.
How about when you're on 93 heading south in the morning, and you see a guy driving along reading a frickin' newspaper?
Yeah.
Should be a ticket for that, right?
I mean, but it seems to be part of the progressive mantra, the progressive mode that we're in, that every single wrong must have a law
as a legal remedy. Yeah.
Instead of saying distracted driving. All right, you get the same jail time if you get in an accident and kill somebody by reaching down and hitting the buttons on the radio or adjusting your car heat or air conditioning.
And we had that. We have a perfectly good distracted driving bill.
Just like those things, or making a phone call, it's all the same. You do it when you're on the straight and level and you've got enough room around yourself and you can afford to glance down for a moment. And when you can't afford to glance down, you don't.
Well, just this morning on WMUR, they were reporting on a state trooper that pinched a guy for doing 113 miles an hour right around the Bedford tolls. Mm-hmm. And you know what he gave for an excuse? He wasn't watching his speed. He was distracted because he was texting.
Oh, that's good.
At 113 miles an hour. I'm thinking there's a Darwin Award in the making. You know?
I'm sorry, I didn't see those
wow.
people on the sidewalk because I was driving away from an armed robbery.
Yeah. Or let's go back to, what was it, Martha Fuller Clark driving on the sidewalk.
Hit the pedestrian.
Hit the two elderly pedestrians.
Yeah. What was she distracted by? You know, the other thing
She's
is...
doing the people's business. We're almost out of time for this segment. We're going to be back with Ralph Benko. I have to interrupt. I apologize.
Sure, no problem.
Ralph will be back. I assume Kimberly's calling us. Kimberly, are you calling us on line 1? Because we're calling Ralph on line 2. Everybody hang in there. We'll be right back in a few minutes with more guests and more news and more Grok Talk.